Yeah, my system's creaking. It's okay. It'll work. It'll work. I know it'll work. I have complete faith that it will work. All right, there we are. We are joined with Professor Mohammad Marandi. Professor Marandi is, there we are. He is Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. Professor, you have my thanks for being here, especially on short notice. Thank you for this. How are you doing this morning? Well, this afternoon for you.
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm that bad. I was talking to the audience about a mess that I made earlier today, and drama that's on the show, but it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter, at least not in the context of us. I'm glad that I could bring you on. I'm curious on something. So,
Well, if you have a problem, let me know. It's just a flight away to Indonesia.
well, right, that's where I'm here now, right? That's where I'm here. Um, with all the protests in America's action trying to screw over this government. Um, I'm curious on something. So right now, Iran went to the European states trying to get them to do what they were supposed to do and fulfill their obligations under the JCPOA. Europe, predictably, did not do that. Um, in response, Iran put in legislation to pull out of the nuclear proliferation treaty, and there's a bit of a
Hmm.
standoff that is effectively taking place. Pezeshkian said that he's going to speed up or trying to push for the ties between Russia and China to, I guess, expedite itself. You have a BRICS meeting that's taking place, which Iran is a part of. And there's trying to be this kind of coordination about how all of the nations are going to respond to the United States and the tariffs that are taking place. From Iran's point of view, where does this leave Iran? The IAEA is trying to get into Iran despite the legislation that's in for the nuclear proliferation treaty. Are they going to allow Grossi and his band of spies back into Iran anytime soon?
Well, of course, that's not going to happen. Uh, the International Atomic Energy Agency won't be given access to Iran or Iranian sites, and so far, we've seen that that law has been observed.
Mhm.
Some people made some protests about two observers uh, coming to Iran, but that was to go to the Bushehr site. The Bushehr nuclear power plant is Russian made, and the Russians, being a part of the International Atomic Energy Agency and having a normal relationship with the body, in order to fulfill its obligations, it has to have the body uh, witness its activities at Bushehr. And right now, the Russians are building a second and third unit as well
Yeah.
in Bushehr. And so there is a refueling process. There was a refueling process taking place. And so those observers came to see that. So it has nothing to do with Iran's nuclear program, its indigenous program that has to do with building centrifuges or enriching uranium or anything like that. This is a nuclear power plant that produces electricity. It also produces drinking water, and the Russians continue to be to they're continuing with its expansion.
Mhm.
So that is something that the Iranians, in order to make sure the Russians have no problems and that they're able to continue with their cooperation, they accepted to do. So that's a different issue altogether. No one should be no one should confuse that with the other aspects of the Iranian peaceful nuclear program.
Okay. Fair
On the
enough.
other hand, there's the issue of negotiations,
Mhm.
and that is with the Europeans. Uh, we've discussed this once before. Having negotiations or declaring the willingness to have negotiations uh, is not in itself a bad thing. The Iranians, on occasions, when it came to the United States, it refused to negotiate. For example, when Trump sent a letter to Ayatollah Khamenei, it's clear we're not going to negotiate. Then, when the United States changed its tone, Iran accepted indirect negotiations, not direct negotiations that the Americans wanted. And the Iranians only accepted it with the Omani government acting as the middleman. And it took 2 weeks for the Americans to accept Iran's conditions. So initially, Iran refused. The Americans had to change their tone. And then they had to accept the Iranian format. And this benefited Iran immensely because, to be very blunt, Jamal, and I think maybe we have probably discussed this on your show, that we believe in Iran, the belief, at least among those who were in the know, was that the chances for a deal were very low.
Right.
And Trump was moving the goalposts. If you recall, Witkoff initially said one thing. He said we can live with enriched uranium at 3.6% or so. And then he did an interview on Fox and he changed the goal. He moved the goalposts and said no enrichment. And it was becoming clear after that there would be no deal. But the Iranians knew that an attack by the Israeli regime with U.S. support was inevitable. And they knew more or less the dates of when the attack was going to take place. And ultimately, the fact that the attack took place as the Americans were negotiating or pretending to negotiate, that benefited Iran, both inside Iran and across the world, because everyone was saying, look, the Iranians were negotiating, but the Americans were being deceptive, they were being dishonest, and they were trying to deceive Iran and help the Israelis carry out this attack. And of course, we saw how Trump gloated the day after, and then he said that Iran has to capitulate and that Iran has to accept absolute surrender. And then he threatened to murder Ayatollah Khamenei, and then all sorts of the nonsense that Trump said during those days we all remember. And then of course things didn't turn out the way he wanted. But the point is that Iran has been negotiating with the United States on and off for many years, since the 1980s. At times it would not negotiate, at times it would negotiate. It depends on the circumstances. But right now we have the circumstances for negotiating indirectly with the United States are not there. The conditions are not there. With regards to the Europeans, the Iranians are willing to talk, but the Iranians are not going to give any concessions, such as allowing the International Atomic Energy Agency access that violates Iranian law. That's not going to happen. So negotiating does not mean capitulation. And the different means in which Iran deals with the Europeans and the Americans depends on the circumstances.
I accept that. No, I accept that. And you're right, it doesn't. And to be fully transparent, I was one of those people who's like, why is Iran allowing these inspectors in at all after what the IAEA was responsible for? So no, I understand that answer. That makes perfect sense. From the standpoint,
let me give you a very important, I'm sure you know this, but during the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, the Iranian, the Russian, and the Chinese foreign ministers signed a joint letter.
Yes.
Stating that they do not accept the snapback being pushed forward by the Europeans, and they see it as illegal and illegitimate and immoral. That is a huge success. But when the Russians, for example, want a couple of inspectors to see the refueling process at the Bushehr nuclear power plant, if we do not allow the Russians to have that done, especially since it does not harm our national security, then how would that play out when we want to sit down with the Russians and the Chinese to put such a letter together?
No, I accept
so we
that.
have to be.
No, I accept that. I accept
Yeah.
that. No, I'm sorry. No, I do accept that. I totally understand your point. It's I guess my initial instinct, and maybe that initial instinct was wrong, was these people were responsible in a subversive way for the murder of Iranian scientists. But you're right. This is not really a national security thing. This is a Russian plant, so it's not the same thing. It's different. So I do get it. I do understand. Um, that means Iran is in a standoff, though, for all intents and purposes. You have had the U.S. pulling out of Iraqi bases. Apparently, the Russian embassy pulled out of bases in the region. So there seems to be this feeling in the air that something is about to take place. Where does Iran stand on this? And I'm saying this in the context of Israel just murdering the cabinet of Yemen, in addition to the president or the prime minister himself. They murdered the entirety of the Yemeni government. That's outrageous. The West hasn't said anything about it. They don't seem to care. What does Iran think in this case? I mean, are they at this point expecting an attack? Meaning, we just accept this as a pause before more kinetic action between these countries?
Well, Jamal, actually, sometimes Israelis do outrageous things that, well, they often do outrageous things that hurt themselves more than anyone else.
Yeah.
They murdered the prime minister and his cabinet that had, they were dealing with civil society issues. They did not bomb a military council. They did not bomb those who are in charge of defense or those who are in charge of striking the Israeli regime or Israeli regime targets. They bombed people who were in charge of health, education, roads, but in addition to that, they murdered a prime minister who is not a Houthi. He's not even a Zaidi. The prime minister is from the south, and he's Sunni. And this created itself awareness among people across the region. People who didn't know that the prime minister was not even a Houthi or a Zaidi. And it shows how, and not even from the north. And it shows how united the people of Yemen are and how they are one and the same. And they together are struggling to stop the Holocaust. And of course, why would anyone in the West condemn Israeli attacks and the murder of a prime done that? Because they're all in bed with the West. No one has broken off ties with the Israeli regime. Turkey continues to send Netanyahu his cheap oil from Baku. Jordan continues to do business as usual. They're all doing business with the regime as it's carrying out this Holocaust. So why should they be upset about Ansarullah, especially since, or the prime minister of Yemen? Why should they be upset at all when the Saudis, who, along with the Emiratis, for 7 years carried out genocide, a starvation genocide, along with Western support and the support of Qatar and Turkey too, initially? It was only when Qatar and the Saudis and the Emiratis had a falling out, did Qatar shift its position, Al Jazeera shifted its position, Turkey shifted its position with Qatar because Qatari money, of course, is always flowing into Turkey. So they were all on the same side when the genocide in Gaza, in Yemen was taking place. There was no sympathy for the people of Yemen. Yeah. In fact, that soldier from the Green Beret, who's been on different shows, that the former soldier, I forget, I don't know his name, but I'm sure you know who I'm speaking about. The one who was the whistleblower, and he witnessed the murder of Palestinians as they were accessing aid and all that. He said that he was in the Red Sea during those years on a ship when American naval ships would stop boats, and if they saw medicine or food in them, they dump it into the sea. They were helping They were helping with the starvation of Yemen. And at that time, all these regimes were supporting Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. So why should they change now? The last 2 years, I think, has exposed everyone, and that is a good thing.
It
It's
is.
a good thing. All the hypocrites have been exposed. You see those who pretended to, like Qatar. Qatar, all they do is show sympathy for the Palestinians on Al Jazeera, but they're sovereign. They've given Trump's son-in-law money, and he's invested it in Israel. So they
Yep.
have the Saudis,
Yep.
and they're allies of the United States, and their air base is used to harm Iran. It was used to bomb Yemen. So everyone's been exposed. That is a good thing. That is a very good thing. But I think that all it's only strengthening the Yemeni government, just as in Iran when they murdered Iranian uh, military commanders. It didn't change anything. It strengthened Iran's resolve. We saw how people in Iran rallied behind the armed forces. Someone says this happens in all countries. Actually, that's not the case. When the United States, when they went after Gaddafi, that didn't happen. When they went after Saddam Hussein, that didn't happen. But Iran always had a high degree of legitimacy, the Islamic Republic, among its people. And that is what caused them to rally under fire, under airstrikes. People were on the streets demonstrating across the country. So, despite the murder of Iranian officials, the resolve of the country increased. And we see that in Yemen too. That just right now, as we're speaking, there are rallies, or those rallies are coming to an end in Yemen across the country. And if people look at Press TV, which covers it live, uh, I think they're the only ones who cover it live, and the speeches of the leader of the revolution in Yemen. Al Jazeera doesn't do it. If people go and watch, they will see the enormous crowd. So they can murder the prime minister, they can murder other leaders, but they're not going to change the situation in Yemen.
From the standpoint of Iran, though, does that inform Iran's point of view? And just to be clear, and this could be the last question, there are some people who make this case of saying the last time that Israel attacked, they went for a decapitation strike. Pezeshkian himself was injured, and they openly bragged, if we could get and attack the Ayatollah, he would be also martyred in this case. And seeing what they just did in Yemen, where they effectively destroyed the civilian government, is there anything? I understand Iran is on a defensive posture, but has there been any talk about preemptive attack, knowing that when they do attack, their objective is to kill the leadership and even the Ayatollah himself if they got the opportunity to do so?
Well, first of all, even if they kill the leader, the president, the head of the armed forces, that is not going to change anything in Iran. We have a constitution, we have laws and regulations. When Imam Khomeini passed away, the leader, the person who founded the revolution, the next day we had Ayatollah Khamenei to replace him. During the war, when the MEK terrorists murdered our president and prime minister, back then we had a prime minister also, then the constitution later changed. They murdered our president, prime minister. These murderers, by the way, have offices across Europe and North America. They have bases in Albania. The West supports terrorism, all sorts of terrorist groups, not just ISIS and Al Qaeda. But when they murdered them, we had elections and they were replaced, and we had new presidents, and new prime minister. So uh, I don't believe that anything that the Israeli regime does when it comes to attacking the Iranian leadership would change Iran.
Professor,
However,
I want you to finish
Iran is
that.
far just
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. I just want to say that Iran today, though, is far more prepared than it was when the Israelis first attacked. The Iranian military has studied its problems, its flaws. The government has studied its flaws. intelligence agencies have been going over their shortcomings, and they're dealing with that. Yet the Israeli regime gave it their best shot because it was a regime change operation, as they call it. Today, the Iranian missile defense capabilities are greater. The Iranian ability to deal with any assault by the Israeli regime is better. And next time round, Iran will strike the Israeli regime much harder than last time. The Israelis lost the war, as we've seen people like Steve Bannon admit openly. But next time round, it will be much worse.
I do accept that. But I think you and I have a difference. As an American, let me say it this way, as an American, um, people have value. And I don't want the Ayatollah killed or martyred. I don't want Pezeshkian martyred. Like those things will have consequences in regards to the degree and the level and escalation of this. I understand Iran will, like any constitutional government, there will be elections. Somebody else will take the mantle, and that person will lead, and they will go further, and it won't stop the response that Iran is going to do. I get all of that. I accept all of that. But I don't want the Ayatollah killed by some filthy Israeli in some kind of strike that these guys are doing in order to try to decapitate the Iranian government. I guess that's where that question came from. And this is not my point of view, by the way. I am dubious about. I'm conflicted. Put it this way: I don't have skin in the game in a direct sense. I do, but I don't in a direct sense. So I abdicate a point of view on preemptive strikes. But there have been people who have made this argument that Iran shouldn't wait, considering they know what Israel is going to do. That's where the question came from. This is not coming directly from me. This is coming from the question just being asked. And yeah, I do. I mean, I place value in political leaders of a particular country. Some of them anyway. And specifically Ayatollah, I actually like him, per se. I hope you get my point, though. I find that they have value. I don't necessarily want them killed in some kind of strike if it can be prevented.
No, I consider him to be the hero of our time, and he has done great things to support the Palestinian people and to prevent Gaza from falling. As we speak, the Iranians are doing whatever they can to assist the Palestinians.
Yeah.
And Iran pays a heavy price for that. People often don't appreciate that. Sometimes people don't understand. They think, oh, we should just be firing missiles. No one is on our side.
Right.
It's just us, Yemen, and global public opinion and groups like Hezbollah. Iran has to protect its borders. It has to protect its, Turkey, sadly, is Turkey is a part of NATO. The Republic of Azerbaijan is an ally of Netanyahu. In Kurdish Iraq, we have huge American influence. So Iran has to carry out a balancing act.
Yes.
But just two things. One is that the leaders in Iran are now much better protected. Iran is much more prepared for an attack than before. But in addition to that, Iran has not said that a preemptive strike is out of the question. In fact, if you recall, after the fighting ended, I said on your show that Iran did not accept a ceasefire.
Right.
People call it a ceasefire, but Iran never accepted a ceasefire. Iran said that it will agree to stop firing missiles and drones if the Israeli regime stops. So Iran has not agreed to anything. If the circumstances arise where Iran feels the need to strike the regime, I think there will be celebrations across the world, and Iran would be completely justified because we're constantly being threatened by this regime, and it is a genocidal regime that's carrying out a Holocaust as we speak.
Yes.
But if the Israeli regime again carries out an unprovoked attack against Iran, Iran is far more prepared than before at all levels.
Professor, you're fantastic. Thank you for this. I always appreciate these conversations, by the way. And, I probe.
Thank you, Kamal.
Because I want to know, like, it's the last question is an uncomfortable one because nobody wants to have a preemptive attack, and I know there are consequences for it, but it is kind of just floating around, which is the reason why I asked the question. I don't mean anything poor by it. Thank you for this. I really do appreciate it.
Not at all, John. Well, thank you for
Absolutely.
having me, and happy birthday.
Thank you for that. So you could tell I'm older. I look older, right? 48 years old, 48 years young, as some people say. Thank you for that. Professor Mohammad Marandi, professor.
You grow wiser by the day.
I try, even though I screwed up today. Professor Mohammad Marandi, he's a professor of English literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. Professor, you're awesome. Thank you for this. You be safe, okay? All right.
You too, Jamal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
All right. Let's see this. Come on, this. There we are. And I can close this. Bounce back to this. Go to this.